On today's podcast, we are talking about the power of habits as they relate to our own leadership, the culture we form with others, and in our personal lives. Habits are some of the most powerful pieces in leadership and culture shaping, and so we're going to talk habits that we form and how we show up and the culture that we create with others. Welcome back to The Thermostat with Jason Barger. If you're currently on a commute, a walk, or just a micro break in your day, glad you're making time to step back, to think, and to reflect on the next steps on your journey. I've never been more convinced the best leaders and team cultures in the world are the ones that make time to step back, breathe in good oxygen, and calibrate their thermostat. I hope today's conversation leaves you feeling grounded and inspired. Now let's dive into today's topic to engage our minds and hearts in order to authentically lead and create compelling cultures wherever we are in the world. Hey everyone, it's Jason, and welcome back to the Thermostat Podcast. Season 6 is, we're way in the middle of Season 6. We're well on our way in Season 6, well over 125 episodes. I forget what we're at right now, but we continue to grow, spread, and exciting stuff is happening. And last episode, it was really fun to talk about the pre-release and the launch of my new book that's coming out August 2nd, 2022, called Breathing Oxygen, and how positive leadership gives life and energy to winning cultures. So I'm excited about that. It was fun to talk about that on last episode. And welcome back. Welcome back to everybody who has been a part of this podcast in the past, and anybody who's new to the podcast, welcome. So glad you're here. It continues to grow and spread, and for that we are excited about. My commitment to everybody is that this will continue to be a place for you to think, for you to step back in your week and think about some messages and some ideas that breathe life into you and bring about some positive energy and help you think about the temperature that you're trying to set as a leader, as a person in your life and work, and just what influence you want to have on the people around you. So I've been saying all along that I'm more convinced of this than ever, not only through research and study, but observations, trends, and then certainly my own experiences, that authentic leadership and compelling cultures and clarity around mission, vision, and values is important as ever within our own personal lives, but also within teams and organizations. So I'm excited to continue to contribute in this way and excited that you are here. So if you'll do me a quick favor, if you're listening, I hope you'll be willing to do this. Just take like 30 seconds, if you will, to rate the podcast 5 stars. If you are willing to write a quick review that just talks about, only authentically, but whatever, why you think these messages are important, how you think this is important in the world to be spreading. And those are the ways in which the podcast gets amplified and spread throughout the world. So thanks to everybody that takes the time to do that. In addition to that, I'll just invite you to share this with the people in your networks, the people in your life and work that ought to be a part of these conversations. There's well over 125 episodes now, so all kinds of topics that hopefully add value and contribute, and also some amazing conversations with thought leaders from around the globe. So share it in your networks. Share it on social media in whatever ways you're willing to do that, authentically, of course. That is very much appreciated because that's the way that it spread. So thanks for everybody that does that. We've been talking about over the last 2 years all that's been happening in the world, and so and then connecting the dots, of course, with everything that we've all been experiencing and what that means then for our own leadership, for culture, for the way that we show up to the people around us, and realizing that today is just an extension of that, and every day when we come to work, when we come to our life, that we are now thermostats for the people around us, and hopefully setting the temperature that we want for our own life and for our work, and to have collective contribution and development for the people around us. So we're going to continue that conversation today. So on today's podcast, we are talking about the power of habits as they relate to our own leadership, the culture we form with others, and in our personal lives. Habits are some of the most powerful pieces in leadership and culture shaping, and so we're going to talk about how important the habits that we form in how we show up and the culture that we create with others. But let's pause for a second. We'll take a quick break, and then we'll be back with today's episode. Many teams and organizations right now are realizing that they need to do both. They need to engage the minds and hearts of their people in person, where everyone in the room can experience the energy of congregating together and find clarity for the road ahead. And they also need to continue to find ways to engage the minds and hearts of their people virtually, with those who are working remotely or at a distance. So, if you are in the process of planning your next team meeting, company all-hands event, conference, or culture summit, and are looking for support with a powerful keynote speech, facilitated team conversations that are the currency for change, or deeper development on leadership mindset and an intentional strategy for the culture you're trying to create, I hope you'll contact us at jasonvbarger.com, jasonvbarger.com. It is my privilege and our honor to partner with great people to provide support in these areas. We want to breathe oxygen into your leaders and throughout your organization so you can set the temperature you want for your culture. We look forward to connecting with you soon. Welcome back. We are talking about habits today. Habits and how powerful habits are. Every human on the planet, every human has good habits and some bad habits. All of us. None of us are perfect. So I don't mean that, that in judgment whatsoever. That's not a judgmental statement. We've all got habits and trends and things that we kind of fall into, some of which that bring out the best in us, and habits that help strengthen us, and others that maybe aren't our best, and habits we form that we're trying to kick, or things that we either hopefully know about ourselves that we want to change, or in some cases we have things that we do or habits we formed that maybe are blind spots for us, and things that we haven't really noticed in ourselves that we're, as we become more aware, we all know that. And so the habits that we form are really powerful, and they help shape us individually, but then also the culture that we create with the people around us. That's not, so I don't mean this judgmental. I'm not talking about this for you as the listener. I'm talking about all of us. So what I mean by good and bad is that we all have habits that support the vision we have for ourselves and who we are hoping to be in our life and work. And we also have, all of us as humans have picked up some bad habits that perhaps make it harder for us to be the people we want to be in our life and work. These are the things, the obstacles, the challenges, the habits that kind of get in our way. And hopefully this makes sense to you. So we all have them. We all have good and bad. Of course, we can all sit back and judge, good or bad habits that might be obvious. But today isn't about that. That's not what I'm wanting to do with this podcast. Today it's about each of us stepping back and looking at how we operate throughout our life and work to be better aware of the habits that may support us or hold us back. So this isn't about judgment of what's good or bad. I'll let you figure that out for yourself of what you think. But it is about awareness and stepping back to be more aware of what are those habits that we've formed individually or collectively with your team and your organization that bring out the best in us, and what are those habits that maybe are holding us back, challenging us, or just flat out obstacles that are really making it difficult for us. Warren Buffett, the famous investor and fellow that many people quote and talk about, nice older gentleman that people, he's a grandpa to many people now, but somebody that, anyway, investor that many people talk about. I think, no matter what you think of Warren Buffett, I thought this quote was pretty interesting. He said, the chains of habit are too light to be felt until they are too heavy to be broken. I'll say that again. The chains of habit are too light to be felt until they are too heavy to be broken. So this is true, and again, I'll break this down a little bit because it took my brain a little while to wrap my head around what he's saying, and I'm not the brightest guy, as you know, so I got to kind of work my way through it. But the chains of habit are too light to be felt until they are too heavy to be broken. And this is true for both good and bad. Again, if not I'm not encouraging us, but in our minds, we quickly kind of judge these things. Or if you want to think about it just positive and negative, you can do that too. So the chains of habit are too light to be felt, meaning the good and the positive habits that we form over time that are good and positive and bring out the best in us. Oftentimes they're so strong and sometimes we don't even notice that we're doing. They're too light to be felt until they get to the point where we've done it for so long and we've built up this great capacity for these positive and supportive habits that we formed that they're almost too strong to be broken. And so they become so strong and helpful to us that they are hard to be broken and help lead us during challenging times. I love that way of thinking about it. And then if you want to think on the other end of it, we also all have, kind of bad or again, negative habits we form over time can also become, and sometimes they're so light to be felt, we don't even notice we're doing it, or it starts out as not a big deal, but then the longer we do it and the longer we fall into that pattern or that routine or that rut, is that they become too heavy to be broken, which means that these habits, these unhealthy or negative or bad habits, then become so difficult to break that they actually weigh us down during challenging times and make the road more difficult for us. And so as James Clear, who is the author of the best-selling book Atomic Habits, which is a cool, great book, Atomic Habits, as he puts it, oftentimes for all of us, the problem isn't you. Again, we want to be judgmental all the times, and we're all oftentimes our harshest critic of ourselves. But it's not about you as a person. I choose to believe you're a good person. We're all good people. So it's not just that we're all flawed. So it's not just that you're bad. It's just that we all fall into, some positive and some negative habits along the way. So the point he makes is the problem isn't you. The problem is your system, our system, that oftentimes each of us as individuals, and then certainly as teams and organizations, we get ourselves into a faulty system that isn't supporting the best habits and oftentimes is allowing these kind of bad habits to continue to be formed and or weigh us down. So you aren't looking at and designing a system of habits that are intended to support your best self and your outcomes you hope for. So the idea is to step back and to think about what are those, let's design a system for ourselves of habits that bring out the best in ourselves individually, but then also the best of ourselves collectively, again, with teams and organizations, to step back and look at, hey, what are we doing to kind of feed the good habits and what are we doing to kind of feed the negative habits? James Clear also talks about standardizing before optimizing. I love this language, standardizing before optimizing, because oftentimes when any of us, and we've talked about this in terms of leading change and in development as us, as individuals or as leaders, we've also talked about it in leading change in a culture, developing a culture. And I talk about the fact that you don't just do it in one big jump, and you're not going to get it perfect every time. But that's, and again, we know that, but oftentimes we want that to be the case in a world of instantaneous gratification. We want to just quickly be at the end and have it be perfect. The reality is we as humans don't develop that way. Cultures of people don't develop that way. And the habits we form, yes, we need to kind of slowly change these habits and then do them, standardize them over time so that they become the standard. And then once they've become the standard, then we can start to look at how do we optimize them? How do we make them even better, strengthen them even more? But we have to standardize it before we can optimize it. And we're focusing on small adjustments to your habits that will help them become standard, and then realize that you can always optimize them as you go. So don't wait for things to be perfect to act. Standardize before optimizing. So I want to talk about this and remind us of how some of this relates to our own leadership and culture shaping. how all of this relates to our own leadership and culture shaping. And so I'm going to just touch on 4 quick things, some of which we're going to dive into deeper and have even brought up in some past episodes, but we're going to dive deeper into some future episodes as well. So if any of these ideas, excite you, don't worry, we'll dive deeper as we move forward. But 4 things to point out today as it relates to our own leadership and culture shaping in regards to habits. The first thing is just an awareness around our own personal biorhythm. Our own personal biorhythm. I'm going to do a whole episode soon on this topic of personal biorhythm. So again, this is one that you'll want to, we won't dive too deep right here, but we'll just kind of introduce the idea here and we'll dive deeper in a future episode. But as we talk about our own personal habits, one thing to be aware of is how our own rhythm we experience in our bodies during an average day or an average week. And a lot of people, I've been sharing this with a lot of leaders and teams and organizations recently, and it's amazing how many of us really haven't even thought about this, or we think we're all the same in this regard, but then once we start to talk about it, we realize, of course we aren't. And then also we start to realize many people haven't taken the time to step back and even think about their own personal biorhythm. So to think about the rhythm of your own body and your own energy level in an average day or an average week. When are your energy levels high and when are your energy levels low? And as soon as, if right in your mind you said, well, everybody's like this, I can tell you, everybody's not like this. Everyone there may be commonalities and similarities that you have with other people and other people that have more similar personal biorhythms than you. But as you talk about this in groups of people, what you start to realize, I know this about my wife, Amy, she and I have different biorhythms. And so we have different energy levels at different times of the day. But to be aware of that is really helpful to our relationship and also to how we move throughout the world. So when are your energy levels high and low? And to be even chart that throughout a day is an interesting exercise for you to just become more aware of your personal biorhythm. When are you at your creative best? If you had to think about an average day, an average week, when are you at your creative best? When does your brain need to reboot? When do your energy levels get low and you identify an opportunity where I kind of need to reset my brain, I need some new energy, and then step back in as you're thinking about those questions and you're looking at that personal biorhythm. Are you building habits to support that awareness so you can be at your best? Or are there habits that you've formed that aren't helping you be at your best? For an example, if your best creative energy is in the morning, but yet that's the time that you're spending it all on just returning emails or office-y kind of work or stuck just in meetings, then that might not be the best use of your personal biorhythm. And as soon as everybody says, yeah, I don't have total control of all my schedule and all that, well, of course, not everybody doesn't have full control. But at the same time, as we get better aware of our own personal biorhythm, we're able to think about what are the habits that we are putting into place that support our energy level and our personal biorhythms. So what are the habits that are supporting our best energy level? And instead of filling in something at our most creative energy time with something that doesn't require that much creative energy, that's really taking away our energy from something that could use that creativity. And at other times in the day when our energy dips, that maybe that's the time for more office-y kind of things or things that don't require as much creativity. So thinking about your own personal biorhythm and then stepping back to think about what are the habits that you support each day that bring out the best in your personal biorhythm, and what are the things that bring out, that get in the way. And again, we're going to do a whole episode on this in the future, so hopefully this just kind of wets your whistle. The second thing I'll bring up for today is just around awareness. The first opportunity as we dive into this topic is to allow yourself some time and space to step back and even become more aware of the daily habits you have in your personal operations in life and work. Not everybody operates the same way as you do. So to step back and become more aware of what are those daily habits that you have formed in your life and your work. Make a list of the daily habits and the routines and try to identify which ones help positively support the person or the outcomes you're hoping for and which ones get in the way or are, kind of negatively are making it more difficult on you or make things hard for you? What are those things? And you may identify things like staying up too late, or, not eating healthy, or avoiding the workout, or you may just say, you know what, I've got this negative habit. As soon as I wake up, I grab my phone and I start looking right at social media, and it's bringing out these kind of negative thoughts, or, everybody's got their own things. And I'm not saying any of that with judgment, other than to be aware of what are those habits you have in your life and work, and which ones are bringing out the best in you, and which are the ones that are maybe taking you down a path and not bringing out the best in you. The third point I'd make related to culture shaping is, you've heard me in culture shaping say, what we allow lingers and what we teach triggers. What we allow lingers and what we teach triggers. So where are the opportunities within your team and your operations? Again, however you're defining that, your team at work, your family, your community, whatever that may be, throughout your entire company. Where are the opportunities within your team and your operations to let go of habits that you might be allowing? And what I mean by what we allow lingers is that the things that we allow that are counter to or opposite of the culture that we want, those things kind of linger and kind of fester in our culture. And so we have to be aware of what are those things that we're kind of allowing to linger, those habits. And then, which are the new habits that you need to teach for how to operate together as a team? So culture shaping is about being able to identify what are you allowing that's counter to what you want, and that's kind of lingering, and then being clear about what do we need to teach differently in order to trigger a more positive chain reaction of what we want in the future. And then the fourth thing that I'll just remind you of is just the 4 laws of habit forming. Thanks again to James Clear for great language around habit forming and us helping to understand just how do we form habits. But he talks about 4 laws to help standardize new habits. And I'll share in the context of what I've talked about in the past, or related to thermostat cultures, about the 6 A's of leading change. So he talks about the 4 laws of habit forming and how you standardize these new habits. And I talk about the 6 A's of leading change, and kind of how in thermostat cultures I talk about the process that we go through to kind of lead the change we want. So I'll add in his language, and then I'll back it up with some of my language so that, and for listeners, you'll see the connection of what we're talking about here. So his 4 laws of habit forming, the first one is, he says, make it obvious. So first law of habit forming, make it obvious. And I would say that's about clarity on what you want to change. You have to have clarity on what you want to change. So make it obvious. The second law, he says, is make it attractive. Make it attractive. And my language would be, you got to want to change. There's got to be something attractive about the change, or else why would we change? If it's not attractive, then we won't do it. So the first thing is we got to make it obvious, which means we got to have clarity around what we want to change. The second thing is we got to make it attractive, which means we gotta want it to change. The third law, he says, make it easy. I would say don't overthink it. Again, establish the next action. Again, that might not be perfect, but think, about standardizing before optimizing. So make it easy, don't overthink it. But yeah, I talk about in the 6 A's of leading change. Eventually we get to the A of action, where we have to then just stimulate the next action. And then the fourth law, he says, is make it satisfying. Make it satisfying, which I would say the last of the 6 A's is anchor, which means we have to anchor it as something that solves something for you and others. And it's not just a change for the sake of change, but we have to anchor it in everything that we do so that it becomes a habit that is satisfying and brings about the outcome that we're hoping for ourselves individually, or in culture shaping for the team or the organization collectively. So this is why making it satisfying and anchoring the culture, the change that we want in organizations, that spills over into how we hire. And making that satisfying for the type of people, the story we're telling, the people that we're attracting to our organization, to how we onboard people, and help it being a satisfying and compelling and engaging process, how we identify emerging leaders, how we develop managers and executive leaders and all hands kind of summits that we do in culture shaping. So all of those things are about making it satisfying and anchoring the culture in everything that we do. So this week, I'll leave you with some questions to ponder as always. What daily habits do you have that might be positively or negatively impacting your path? Make a list. What daily habits do you have that might be positively or negatively impacting your path? And kind of just make a list of that just to be aware of it. What conversations within your team or your operations could help teach new habits? What are the conversations within your team or your operations that could help teach new habits? And what new habit could you make obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying? What new habit could you make obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying? We all breathe in energy into we breathe energy into our new habits every single day. And either for the good, that bring out that helpful oxygen or positive oxygen that kind of brings out the best of us and supports the good habits we're wanting to feed, or we breathe in toxic air that makes it harder to breathe. And positive habits obviously help us breathe in good air, and negative habits make it harder to breathe for us and harder to perform, harder to be at our best. So calibrating our own personal thermostat is about our own awareness of these things, and then our ability to use that awareness to then stimulate action and behavior and a response in the world in alignment with that temperature that we're wanting to set. So that's the heart of emotional intelligence, is our ability or inability to be aware of those things and then set a temperature that starts internally but flows externally to the people around us. So I hope you'll keep tuning in. I hope you thought today's episode was interesting and triggered some good thought with you. We've got a great season ahead of us, again, to support your vision and your mindset on being an authentic leader in the world and creating compelling cultures. And on the next episode, I'm excited to look at some of the mid-year, kind of take a mid-year look at some of the 2022 work trends that the Harvard Business Review, Forbes, many other kind of experts in the future of work identified as, hey, here are some trends that are coming related to the workforce and HR stuff. And we're going to take a look at it from a mid-year perspective, and I'm going to give my observations on some of those trends that they predicted and what is it that I see from my angle. So remember, the best leaders, teams, and cultures on the planet stimulate progress by recalibrating their thermostat together. Thank you for listening to today's podcast, and I hope the messages and questions stimulate positive change along your path. As always, if these messages resonate with you and add value to your life, I hope you'll help amplify them throughout the world. Please rate, comment, and share on whatever podcast or social media platform you're using, and share this podcast with the people in your life or work who should be part of these conversations. That way, the spirit does, in fact, spread. If these messages or developing leaders and culture would be helpful to you and your organization, please contact us at jasonvbarger.com, jasonvbarger.com. And remember, we are all ambassadors for the culture we want to create in our life and work. We have to own the vision we want to be a part of. The future of leadership is you, is me, is us. Be a thermostat.